Hi, I'm Carina with the Kendrick Law Group Family Division. And here with me today, I've got the distinct honor of speaking with Chris Beck from Soberlink. Chris, hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. And just a few words about Chris. He is the Vice President of Business Development for Family Law. He's been with Soberlink for the last 4 years. He's a graduate from the University of California, Irvine, with a degree in psychology and an emphasis in child psychology. Chris and his wife are foster parents. 2 of their 5 children have been adopted out of foster care, and their youngest child is 6 months old, and they are currently fostering. That's just incredible.
Yeah, my wife has a big heart, and so it's nice to see. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, Chris, turning to SoberLink, you know, alcohol issues are sometimes a big concern in divorce cases in developing a parenting plan. And, you know, it's people often don't know how to handle it and what to do, what steps to take to, ensure the safety of their children. That's the most important thing. And so talk a little bit about how SoberLink can come in and help.
Sure. So our device is a professional grade breathalyzer that's FDA cleared as a medical device to test for VAC levels. So this is actually our breathalyzer. So you can see it's very compact. What would happen is that the monitor client would blow into the device, and then as they're blowing into the device, the camera takes a photo of that individual, and we use facial recognition software to actually confirm the identity. Then the results are sent to our secure web portal where they are analyzed and then disseminated to anyone that's on the monitoring agreement. So let's say your ex or your sober coach or maybe a mental health professional, they're all getting the results in real time to know exactly where that individual is from a BAC standpoint, whether it's compliant or non-compliant. This is something that is a little bit new to the marketplace because of the fact that it is using modern technology to really get to where you are with your BAC level today.
Wow, well, the technology is really incredible. And I know that SoberLink is a leading expert in this remote alcohol monitoring system.
Yeah.
So that's, people can do it from the convenience of wherever they are.
That's right. Given that we have 2 different devices, we have a Bluetooth one that connects to your smartphone, or we have a cellular device where it's just plug and play. You turn it on, you breathe into, and then the results are sent through a cellular signal that's inside the actual breathalyzer that goes to all the people on the monitoring agreement. So 2 different devices, 2 different ways to actually accomplish the same goal.
Now, I know that there are a couple of different levels. There's level 1 versus level 2 monitoring. Can you share a little bit about what that distinction is?
Yeah, sure. So, our technology started out as being something that we really wanted to ensure was the continued care arm of treatment. So we developed a program where people are testing on scheduled times throughout the day to share their sobriety with like a sober coach or a mental health professional. And that is really our level 2 program for family law, where someone has been asked to show their sobriety during every single day, 7 days a week. So usually what would happen is they would test first thing in the morning, maybe mid-afternoon, and then right before they go to bed. That would be a typical schedule. Sometimes we see they start with 4 tests, and then after 4 to 6 weeks, they can move back to 3 tests a day as they show compliant behavior. That would be our level 2 program. Our level 1 program is actually really unique because we see in family law cases all the time where people are accused of actually abusing alcohol, but then there's this she said, he said, and there's really no proof to back it up. So what happens is that the judge will order sobriety during the parenting time period. And now with our technology, the judge can easily say, I want you to make sure you test 1 hour prior to picking up the children. You can test every 3 to 4 hours during the parenting time period, And then after drop off, returning the children back, you can test again. And now you have bookends of documented sobriety for the entire parenting time period. So a real unique program for SoberLink, something that we kind of coined as parenting time only. It is about 60% of our total business, but we do see people start there. And then when they realize that they're having non-compliant behavior, they'll switch to a level 2 where it's a little bit more restrictive.
Yeah, what a game changer, because as we all know, in family law cases, there is a lot of that he said, she said, and vice
Yeah.
versa. So, what a great tool to be able to combat that by either proving it or disproving it. And then you've got that internal mechanism that allows the feature to go from the level 1 to the level 2 if necessary. So that's really a useful tool. What I want to talk about next is there's a couple of interesting myths that I discovered as I was preparing for our conversation today, and I really found them interesting. And I'd like to walk through those myths and SoberLink's perspective on the legitimacy or not of those myths. And I'd like to start with the first myth, that a parent should be set up with as many tests per day as possible to ensure sobriety.
Right.
Because that's what I would think. Let's test 20 times, maybe, test 20 times.
Exactly. And I just, we have been doing this since 2011, and we've had a lot of experts comment on what should be the best practices for using a technology such as SoberLink. And they came to consensus and said that for it to be useful for both the monitored client and those tests to be validated by the concerned party, we need to limit it to a schedule to where they can test on a frequency that doesn't interrupt their day-to-day. So what they always suggest is first thing in the morning. You wake up in the morning, the device is on your nightstand, you take a test. Then they always recommend that maybe there's 2 tests in between before you do the test at night. But all of these tests are scheduled because we want to make sure there's not imposed anxiety with these tests that
Right.
then would maybe cause a relapse, because we want to make it as easy as possible for the person to start changing behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And with scheduled tests, that actually gives them positive reinforcement to then say, hey, this is working. But if I'm always waiting for a random test, which it used to be, very popular in this industry, is let's just give them random tests. They got to call in every single day. We see that more on the criminal side. That anxiety can actually cause people to get back to where they were with a poor decision making and drinking more. That's the last thing we want to do. We want to empower these individuals to prove their sobriety, keep a consistent schedule so that they maintain their sobriety over time.
Well, and that leads me right into the second myth that we're going to talk about, that it is better to require a random test and surprise the parent instead of setting up a test schedule. Because, I agree with you. I think early on, that was the default, was to do, we want them to submit to random testing.
Yeah.
And it really seems like there's a deeper conversation that goes to the psychology behind it. So
Absolutely.
that ties in with the frequency of the testing.
It never made sense that, let's just say we have an individual that has alcohol use disorder. Part of recovery is that person is going to have relapses, and that needs to be known. A lot of people go into these family law cases and say, well, if my husband or my wife tests positive, I'm going to take those kids away. And I just want a mechanism that will catch them so that I can get them out of their lives. Well, is that really in the best interest of the child? The child's best interest is not only safety, but to maintain that parenting from both mom and dad going forward, as close to how it was pre-divorce as it is now, after divorce.
And during the transition, right.
And during that transition, absolutely. So we're trying to keep that balance and make sure that our tool, SoberLink, is really used as more of an empowerment tool to see those kids, instead of something that's I'm just using this so that I don't get caught or whatever it may be. It needs to be something that is more seen in a positive light, and that's really what we're after. So
yeah, that's great. Let's talk about the third myth,
Yeah,
that an instance of missing a test should be
yeah,
treated as a drinking event. So we've got a schedule,
we do.
and we've got a schedule, and one of the participant doesn't show up for one of the scheduled tests. What happens there?
So yeah, I mean, if you have a positive test, it's a positive test. But if you miss a test, it has to be treated a little bit differently because it is, and I will tell you, because in working for the company, we are required to test daily and keep the routine going because I want to know that the individuals that are using our system, I want to understand how difficult it is to use. And I miss some tests. It's going to happen. Um, as much as you think you're on a routine and that caveat, that carrot of, hey, if I don't take a test, I might not get my parenting time for that period. I understand that's a very strong thing, but it is difficult to stay on this program and it needs to be understood. So when someone misses a test, it opens up maybe a conversation that we can have with individual to say, okay, maybe your work schedule has changed and it's not appropriate to take a test while you're at work. Maybe there's another time that might be more advantageous for you to take a test that still falls within, your 3 to 4 tests a day that you're doing. So we don't always want to treat a missed test similar to a positive test. And that's the importance of knowing the difference.
That makes a lot of sense. So now let's shift gears. There is a positive test. The myth
Yes.
here is that a positive test should result in immediate and harsh consequences. No, suspend all time sharing. No, you can't see the kids at all. Let's talk a little bit about that myth.
Sure. I do believe that there in family law, we would want to suspend the actual parenting time that's happening when they blow a positive test. So there's going to be some consequences that get enacted based on that positive test. But it doesn't mean we take or remove the kids away from that parent. Because remember, the disease model states that relapse is going to happen. We know from our data that it happens in 80% of family law cases. That's a huge number. And that's something that we can't ignore. So we always say to attorneys that we need to put consequences in place that state what happens if there's a positive test and how do we get that parent back into the parenting time. Now that can be decided by a conversation between the two parties, or the judge maybe makes the final decision, or maybe even in a collaborative, we just put that on paper and write it out so that it doesn't have to come back to the team. They know exactly what's going to happen. For instance, we had a collaborative case that everything was well written and documented out what would happen if a positive test took place. So if a positive test took place, they would have to show a week worth of compliant testing prior to re-implementing the standard parenting time period that was in place. So, just knowing that extra measure that had to take place once a positive, there was a light at the end of the tunnel for them to get back on the program and start submitting compliant tests. And it works. And as long as we see it as an empowerment tool and not something that is hey, I'm going to catch you and I'm going to take your kids away, I think this thing is something that can be really a positive experience for both parties.
And I think that's a critical point to emphasize, that it's, when you're talking about this testing and you're talking about positive tests and consequences, I think it is imperative that you have built in what the consequences are, and then what the necessary steps are going to be to restore the time sharing, to give them hope, that their parental rights are not being stripped away, and they have steps to take so that they can ensure their ability to parent, but to also be the best version of that parent that they can be. So I think that's really important. And another thing that you just touched upon that I want to follow up on, is your work with the collaborative community. I had the privilege this past week of co-chairing the Florida Academy of Collaborative Professionals 8th annual conference, which was our first virtual conference. And I want to thank you, Chris and Soberlink, for being our platinum sponsors for that conference. Your contribution was just incredible. Thank you for your support in that.
No, thank you. I mean, the collaborative community has been so supportive of SoberLink, and we really do appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing with the mental health neutral that is always involved in a collaborative case. We see how that mental health neutral is actually writing SoberLink into some cases that might have this type of problem, but they're addressing all those things that we just spoke about in our best practices. And that's really keeping both parents involved in the parenting and also, keeping that child safe. So in our end result is now you have a child that's interests are always kept at the top. And that's what I believe the collaborative process really does very well.
Yes, well, I mean, the collaborative process is meant and intended to be a very comprehensive team approach to helping families navigate this
Absolutely.
process, and the parallels with the comprehensive nature that SoberLink attempts to help solve this, help solve this issue, is really a great partnership. So, we thank you for the tools that you're giving to the collaborative professionals, so that we can help the families that we work with, that are dealing with this issue.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for the virtual programs to be over and be able to, have some one-on-one opportunities maybe in 2021 to come out and visit and talk with everybody. So looking forward to next year.
Yes, as I am as well. Chris, I know a lot of times you're contacted or brought in either through professionals, whether they're lawyers, possibly the neutral facilitators in the collaborative setting and so forth,
Yes.
that everybody has agreed to go ahead and pull you in. But if someone wanted to get in touch with you directly, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
I think it's by just calling my cell. That's the best way to get in touch with me. I'm pretty much available at any time. My number is 714-330-6905. Again, 714-330-6905. And I am willing to discuss at any time or help explain our program to the individuals involved so that everyone has a clear understanding of expectations and what's involved in our SoberLink program.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today, and you've provided a wealth of information, especially regarding the technology that SoberLink employs, and really diving in a little bit to the myths about alcohol abuse and solutions that we can use in our family law cases.
Yeah, I think technology has brought some new opportunities to the table and ways in which we can manage it. So, yeah, I appreciate the collaborative process, taking advantage of our technology that we offer and keeping us top of mind. So when those cases do arise, you look to us as a solution. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if
All
you
right.
have any questions about how the courts are looking at parenting plans, or what experts or professionals that you might need to help develop a parenting plan if you're in the middle of a divorce or thinking about a divorce, please contact me. Again, I'm Carina Leeson with the Kendrick Law Group. And that's a wrap for today. Thanks so much, Chris.
Karina, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one. Be
You
safe.
too. All right. Bye-bye.